A suicide bombing kills dozens of people in Somalia's capital city, the second major terrorist attack this year. A temporary ban on refugees, some from African countries, could prevent many from entering the U.S. under the Trump administration. We talk to an expert on how the president's foreign policy is shaping up. And a musical with dramatic overtones takes the lead with 14 Oscar nominations. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. A deadly terror attack in East Africa Wednesday has killed at least 28 people and wounded more than 50 others in Somalia's capital city. Well, just before 9 a.m. local time in Mogadishu, witnesses say a suicide bomber detonated a truck filled with explosives near the Daya Hotel, and moments later, a vehicle arrived with 4 armed militants who stormed the hotel and exchanged gunfire with the hotel guards. Somali Security Minister Abdurazak Omar Mohammed says the truck was loaded with charcoal to disguise the explosives. About 40 minutes after the attack began, a second explosion went off near the hotel. Witnesses told VOA that the car which brought the militants to the hotel was detonated. Authorities believe that vehicle was triggered by a remotely controlled device. At least 7 journalists were among those injured in the second explosion. That's according to the Secretary General of the National Union of Somali Journalists. Still in Somalia, an exercise program for survivors of sexual assault and other violence is helping participants overcome trauma. Jason Patton-Kin reports from Mogadishu.
It's a trendy exercise program in an unlikely place. In classes across the Somali capital, Mogadishu, youth practice breathing, meditation, and stretching. But it's not just for fun. This mind-body wellness program, as it's called here, is for survivors of sexual violence and other trauma to help them with the counseling they receive. Organizers asked VOA not to reveal names of participants and instructors for security reasons.
In the beginning, I had anxiety. Now I'm better. I couldn't eat. Now I can eat. I don't have problems. It helped me reduce my anxiety and the worries. Each time the memory comes back to me, I do the exercise, and it helps me forget.
Besides survivors of sexual violence, there are former child soldiers and other youth suffering from trauma or at risk of recruitment into armed groups, like the militant group Al-Shabaab. For survivors of physical attack, the mind-body wellness complements traditional counseling techniques, which usually only focus on psychology.
It helps if your body is settled, your mind is at ease. If you close your eyes and you breathe in and out, and you calm yourself and you don't move your body, then it can help you ease your mind.
The Mind-Body Wellness program began last year with 12 Somali instructors trained by the Africa Yoga Project, a Nairobi-based nonprofit. The program breaks barriers in conservative Somali society where there are strict gender roles, including surrounding access to athletics programs.
They say that what a boy can do, a girl cannot do, but that's not true. That's a lie. It's the way you carry yourself. I try to do what a boy can do.
Some 300 people participate in the Mind-Body Wellness classes each week, but there aren't enough services for survivors of sexual violence in Somalia, including access to justice or basic health care.
The response services are getting increased day after day, but the prevention activities and the overall system building needs to be done because we can provide a response as much as we can. Fund millions, but we didn't cure the problem.
Healing trauma is not the same as preventing it, but at least it's a start. Jason Patinkin for VOA News in Mogadishu.
U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to sign executive orders starting on Wednesday that include a temporary ban on most refugees and a suspension of visas for citizens of Syria and 6 other Middle Eastern and African countries. That is according to congressional aides and immigration experts briefed on the matter. The president tweeted that a big day was planned on National Security Wednesday and is expected to ban for several months the entry of refugees into the United States, except for religious minorities escaping persecution. That is until more aggressive vetting is in place. Other measures include a directive to build a wall along the U.S. border with Mexico and another to boost personnel needed to crack down on illegal immigrants. Now, for more on how the U.S. foreign policy might shape up under President Donald Trump's administration, I'm joined in studio by Jennifer Cook, Director of the Africa Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Ms. Cook, welcome to Africa 54 after such a long time.
Yes, thanks, Vincent. Nice to see you.
Now, we've been in this town for some time, and we see, changes come every 4 years, sometimes 8 years, things change. But some on the continent observing say, what changes really in terms of the U.S. policy? Do we expect some kind of really dramatic change?
Well, right now it is actually very hard to say because the key players are not in place yet. No assistant secretary, even no secretary of state confirmed as yet. But I think we do have some indicators simply in President Trump's America First language. The first two actions that he's taken on Africa that impact Africa is this travel ban that affects Somalia, Sudan, and Libya. And then the reinstatement of the Mexico City language, which forbids U.S. assistance going to organizations that provide counseling or abortion services. Mm-hmm. Both of those have huge impact in Africa. The Mexico City law, in terms of preventing family planning, maternal health NGOs from operating, and the ban on travel having, I think, reputational as well as probably security consequences down the line.
Now, in the past, people have looked at, Democratic administrations and then they compare and contrast with the Republican administrations. Is this kind of going to shape up differently than a typical Republican administration from the perspective of those who are interested in the continent of Africa?
Yeah, I mean, Bush actually surprised many people, had a very active Africa agenda with PEPFAR, with the Millennium Challenge account, with AFRICOM. And President Obama kept going on those and then added Feed the Future, a global health initiative, and so forth. It's hard to say right now what the White House will do. One thing to keep in mind is that Congress has always had strong bipartisan support for big Africa initiatives. So Feed the Future and food security is now in law. AGOA is a law. Power Africa is a law. So there's a lot. It's not simply that the president can come in and shift. So
there's quite a bit that will remain the same and perhaps just get boosted.
Yeah, there's some continuity. Yeah. These bans, I think, are problematic. The security approach may be much more focused, strategic, and kinetic.
Yeah. Although the president says, until a better system has been established, meaning it's not a permanent thing, but it's temporary. Yeah. But let's talk about certain issues that even the Obama administration dealt with quite a bit, say the South Sudan conflict. Yeah. Let's talk about Somalia, for example. What could change in the way the U.S. involves itself in resolving or at least intervening in those situations?
Well, as I said, the State Department and the bureaucracies, there's going to be probably a lot of continuity there in trying to build the central government and so forth. I do think the travel ban, and it may not be permanent, but it's problematic in that it allows less engagement with civil society, some of the people, with business people, some of the kind of interconnections that are going to be very important to building out some kind of peace in Somalia. Mm-hmm. You also don't know what it will mean in terms of kinetic strikes and drone strikes and the military side of things. Mm. Generally, I think Africa will be much lower down on the president's agenda, which may mean that there's a lot of continuity.
What makes you think so? What makes you... look, we said George W. Bush came into office. Many people thought he wouldn't have a lot of interest on the continent. He surprised many. What makes you think that Africa might go down on the agenda in their U.S. policy?
Well, perhaps I'm wrong. There was a set of questions, for example, sent over by the transition team to the State Department that were really quite negative in outlook and didn't exactly express kind of deep knowledge or nuance on some of the big African issues. There may be things on business ties and so forth that can capture his attention. But I don't know that the democracy and human rights agenda, the development assistance, the health programs will get the same kind of bully pulpit treatment under a Trump administration.
On the other side, what is it, do you think, the African countries or the continent as a whole under through the African Union could do to in a way, engage itself with the U.S. in a way that will be not only beneficial, but will make the Trump administration be interested on the continent?
Well, that's the thing, is how you frame the interests and making the case that there are win-win situations that are good for the United States and good for African continent generally. You work on development to boost economies that then makes them better trade partners and investment partners. You work on governance and issues like that because that helps stem to some extent insecurity and radicalization and militancy. So trying to look beyond the immediate responses to kind of unintended consequences and the causation of some of Africa's challenges, and focusing on some of the big opportunities that are there in a way that appeals to President Trump's kind of America First agenda.
Yeah. And something to think about, China, could it play a role in that President Trump is clearly very concerned about the influence of China. Now, China's big in Africa. Could that be a motivation for the U.S. to say, come on, we don't want to let these guys take a lead on everything?
Well, exactly. That's one of those kind of levers that you say, look, if you walk away from the broad-gauged engagement that we have in Africa with civil society, with opposition leaders, with business, with governments, you're leaving an open playing field to China, both economically and in terms of alliances and influences on debates that are of global import. So don't walk away or you leave the gate open for China. That's one lever, I think, of the kind of argument that may capture the president's attention.
Jennifer, as always, we'll be watching developments and probably call you back for further analysis.
I will look forward.
Thank you very much. Well, Jennifer Cook is director of the Africa Studies Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Well, the decision by President Trump to advance construction of 2 oil pipelines in the U.S. heartland renewed protests on opposite sides of the country. Mr. Trump signed executive orders calling for new negotiations to allow construction of the Keystone XL pipeline, which is designed to carry Canadian crude to U.S. refineries near the Gulf of Mexico, and the Dakota Access Pipeline sending oil from the state of North Dakota to Illinois. Later Tuesday, protesters led by 2 congressmen marched near the White House. Protesters marched in Seattle as well. After a lengthy review, former President Barack Obama rejected the Keystone project in 2015 on environmental grounds. Late last year, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers blocked the Dakota Access project and said it would look for an alternative route after the Standing Rock Sioux tribe and its supporters opposed the project. They said would threaten drinking water and Native American cultural sites. Trump says the U.S. will negotiate the terms of the Keystone project with Canadian officials, saying it could create 28,000 jobs. President Trump is calling for an investigation into alleged voter fraud in November's presidential election, supporting his belief that voting by millions of undocumented immigrants cost him a win in the popular vote. Democrats say the president should focus on the promises from his election campaign and stop insisting on falsehoods. VOA's Zlatic Sahok has more.
Trump won 306 electoral votes compared to rival Hillary Clinton's 232, securing an uncontested victory. But a final vote count showed that Clinton won about 3 million more popular votes than he did. After his inauguration, Trump said the results reflected voter fraud. His press secretary confirmed the claim Tuesday.
The comment that he made was, he said 3 to 5 million people, could have voted illegally, based on the studies that he's seen. But he's very clear that he won the election based on the 306 electoral votes that he got.
The Trump administration also insists that his inauguration had the highest attendance ever, contrary to media reports and photographs suggesting otherwise. According to many estimates, a women's march the day after the inauguration dwarfed the number of people that came to see the president's swearing-in ceremony. Trump's fellow Republicans skirted the issue, but when cornered by reporters, Speaker of the House Paul Ryan had this to say.
I've already commented on that. I've seen no evidence to that effect, and I've made that very, very clear.
And then he promptly changed the subject. But Democrats sent a strong message to the president that he will be held accountable for what he says.
You cannot run a government. You cannot help people. You cannot keep America safe if you don't actually admit to the facts, plain and simple. And unless that starts happening, this country is going to have real trouble. And it's not going to be Democratic trouble, Republican trouble, liberal trouble, conservative trouble, just trouble because of avoidance of the facts.
In his remarks Tuesday, Senator Chuck Schumer of New York also rebuked Republicans for a lack of response to the president's claims.
When these falsehoods are told, our Republican colleagues have an obligation to reject them, not to skirt around them.
Schumer also said that as president, Trump should not talk about the election or the number of people who came to the inauguration, but about how many new jobs he is creating. One of Trump's campaign promises was to revive the U.S. manufacturing industry and renegotiate trade agreements that he believes harm American workers. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54. And check out all headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, the Chinese government pushes hard on free trade and globalization following Donald Trump's inauguration. Stay with us.
News and notes. This is Living Better.
Nicolas Müller was a Swiss javelin champion who had to retire from competition after he suffered painful damage to the cartilage inside his knee that cushions the bones. In 2012, he took part in a trial at Basel University Hospital where doctors took stem cells from his nose and grew them into cartilage to insert into his knee. Lead surgeon Dr. Marcus Mumm says the procedure has benefits over artificial joint replacement.
We see lots of problems with artificial joint replacement. It's a point of no return for the patient. We think with our therapy in the future we can also enter these conditions and improve patient function.
Doctors say it will be a long time before this procedure will be suitable for patients at large, but Nicolas Müller says his operation brought relief and allowed him to return to sports without pain. I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
Well, the first ever direct China to Britain freight train pulled into London last week, the latest milestone in China's ambitions to redevelop the old Silk Road trade routes from Asia to Europe. Now, the Chinese government has spoken out strongly in favor of free trade and globalization in the days following the inauguration of Donald Trump. The president claims Beijing's trade policies are damaging the American economy. Henry Ridgewell has more.
After 18 days and 28,000 kilometres, the freight train pulled into London on time last week. It passed through Kazakhstan, Russia, Belarus, Poland, Germany, Belgium and France, finally crossing under the English Channel. Inside, the 68 containers were household items, clothes, fabrics, bags and suitcases.
This is twice as quick as sea, so it's got an important role there. And as I said, it's much, much cleaner and cheaper than air freight. I mean, it's 20 times less pollution than air freight.
But there's more to the train than its cargo. Analysts say the historic journey also carried with it a political message that China is forging new trade routes and new markets. Already 15 European cities are served by freight trains from China as part of Beijing's One Belt, One Road initiative.
The domestic market in China now seems to be very much stagnated. So the China is desperately looking for the new market and be able to absorb that excessive amount of production capacity. And obviously that freight train and serve a very good vehicle for the Chinese manufacturers and restore the business confidence inside China.
As the train arrived in Europe, another historic trip was being made as Xi Jinping became the first Chinese president to attend the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. He spoke out in favour of globalisation and free trade.
Pursuing protectionism is just like locking oneself in a dark room. While wind and rain may be kept outside, so are light and air.
That was a thinly veiled retort to US President Donald Trump's criticism of China's trade policies and his pledge to put America first in all future deals. Analyst GAU says China spies an opportunity as a counterweight.
History opened a new era, and China has shown its willingness much more to shoulder more responsibility on the global stage and then try to become a kind of responsible leadership as being presented in Davos.
In Europe, where popular opposition to globalization is running high, Xi's words have been welcomed. So could new US trade policies drive Europe and China close together?
Don't forget, these two economic blocs has a divisive opinions on free market enormously, and they have been battled on these free market ideas for so many years. And this is not something I think that EU and China could resolve overnight.
Nevertheless, analysts say the Trump administration likely heralds a new era in global trade relations. But the outcome of this realignment is difficult to predict. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, a musical with dramatic overtones takes the lead with 14 Oscar nominations. We'll be right back.
So if we have democracy, pure democracy, I believe Gambia will go forward.
Nous avons souhaité être aux côtés de la République centrafricaine, aux côtés de la...
I am Sheikh Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
Welcome back. In entertainment news, La La Land, a musical with dramatic overtones, is the runway leader with 14 Oscar nominations at the Motion Picture Academy announced its award nominees Tuesday. Moonlight, which chronicles the life of a black man who struggles to discover his identity growing up in a rough neighborhood of Miami, and the science fiction drama Arrival snared 8 nominations each. VOA's Penelope Pulu has more on this year's Oscars competition.
City of stars, are you shining just for me?
Damien Chazelle's musical La La Land pays tribute to the city of Los Angeles and the people who have gone there with dreams of making it as an artist. The film is a popular favorite, even though many may feel that it is overstated. It is a musical, after all. But Chazelle's ingenious story arc, eye-candy cinematography, and emotionally sweeping music composition make it much more.
I just heard you play, and I wanted...
The film is a front-runner for Best Picture, and lead actors Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone have also received nominations in their respective Best Actor and Actress categories.
What are you going to do? I have my own club. Is that going to happen every time? I think so.
For a long time, try not to remember.
Director Barry Jenkins' Moonlight follows with 8 nominations. The film offers a brooding drama about the life of a boy growing up defenseless in a mean neighborhood and trying to deal with his sexuality.
Let your head rest in my hand. Relax.
Mahershala Ali plays a drug dealer with parental feelings for the boy. He is considered by many the frontrunner for an Oscar in the supporting actor category. Naomi Harris, who plays as the boy's drug-addicted mother, has also received a nod for an Oscar in the supporting actress category.
Priority one. What do they want? Where are they from?
Tied with Moonlight with 8 nominations is Denis Villeneuve's sci-fi drama Arrival. When alien spaceships arrive on Earth, linguistics professor Louise Banks, played by Amy Adams, is asked to interpret their language and help humanity communicate with them.
It's their language.
Well, I can't be his guardian.
Manchester by the Sea received 6 Oscar nominations, but it is a serious contender in the Best Picture category.
All my friends are here. I got 2 girlfriends, and I'm in a band. You're a janitor in Quincy. What the hell do you care where you live?
Director Kenneth Lonergan's original script offers a gut-wrenching experience. Casey Affleck gives a brooding performance as Lee Chandler, a janitor from Boston, who is bequeathed the guardianship of his nephew when his brother dies. Both Casey Affleck and Michelle Williams have received nominations, he for Best Actor, she for Supporting Actress, and they both are favorites.
Who the hell said I got to like you?
Affleck will have to compete with Denzel Washington in Fences. Depending on artistic, social, and political convictions, the Oscar voters could go either way, and no one would bat an eye. It remains to be seen whether this Oscar year makes #OscarsSoWhite a thing of the past. Several films and actors of color received nominations this year, such as supporting actress nominees Viola Davis for Fences and Octavia Spencer for Hidden Figures. And Ruth Negga received a Best Actress nomination for her lead role as Mildred Loving, the rights advocate and black wife of Richard Loving.
Husband and wife.
She's also competing against Natalie Portman for her role as Jackie Kennedy in Jackie. And, as we mentioned before, Emma Stone for her role in La La Land. French-born Isabelle Huppert for Elle, who has already won a Golden Globe for the same role. And Meryl Streep in Florence Foster Jenkins. So will viewers favor a romantic uplifting tale? Will they vote based on race? Or will they choose a touching drama or sci-fi? It's anyone's guess. Penelope Pulu, VOA News, Washington.
Well, and that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings, Today Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us here in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. There are many types of games people can play. But what does it mean when you're doing this?
Playing hooky. Hey, I didn't see you in our fitness class today.
Yeah, I was playing hooky. I just didn't feel like going all the way across town for class.
Oh, I see. Well, next time, let me know so I can play hooky too.
To play hooky means to be absent from a place or event where you are supposed to be without permission. Often, this expression is used for children who are absent from school. Some believe the noun hooky may have come from the 19th century phrase hook it, meaning escape. And that's English in a Minute.